friends. I'm your host, Erin Port, and welcome to the Simple Purposeful Living podcast. Life can be overwhelming and busy, so once a week, I invite you to join me, and together we will make simple tweaks to uncomplicate the hard parts of our life so we can spend more time doing what we love. Welcome back, friends. It's episode 90, and today we are approaching the end of January. Some people say January feels like it has 180 days. I always think January goes fairly quickly. It's February that feels longer to me, but let me know either in the comments or in an email or in a DM. I'd be curious to see what you think. But all that to say, I definitely feel like January is a lot slower. There's a lot more open time than there was just a couple of weeks ago. It feels like Christmas was months ago. Anybody else feel that way? But I was a lot more intentional in the month of December. So that brings me to our first weekend in January. I shared a little bit about this online, but our first weekend in January, we didn't have anything on the calendar, and we just hunkered down and hung out, and we spent a lot of time on our phones. Full disclosure, it was the easy button. You know, you're kind of bored, you don't have all the holiday festivities anymore, and you almost don't know what to do with yourself. And so we just spent a lot of time on our phones, all of us, and not our little two, they don't have them, but they, TV, iPads. I just felt like none of us were very connected. I left that weekend just feeling sort of blah. And I thought, I don't want to do this every weekend in the month of January. So I need to make a tweak. That's always the sign for me when I just feel like A, overwhelmed, or B, just out of sorts. That's where, after years of practicing this, I say to myself, there's a tweak in here. And again, we don't need a big overhaul or a big solution. There's normally a tiny tweak in there if we just take time to reflect. And that's really hard, especially when time feels like it's moving really fast. But if we can get into the habit of even doing this tweak of stopping and just saying, okay, what is a tiny change we can do going forward? And so I did that, and I was reflecting back on December because I thought, oh, even though December was busy, I felt like I was pretty intentional with my time. And I thought, why is that? And I think it was one of the things I talked to you about on a previous podcast where we sat down as a family and we said, okay, what are some things that we want to do as a family? And can I put those on the calendar so that we make sure that they get done? Things like gingerbread house making. And on Sundays in December, we had a Christmas movie and charcuterie board night. And we just did that every single weekend. And those little things helped us to connect as a family. It helped us to rest and use our time wisely. And I thought, okay, how can I use that and make that a tweak for January? And while we don't have all the holiday festivities anymore, I was like, there are things that I want to learn how to do. And there are things that our family enjoys doing together that we could put in a little quote unquote menu of things. And so this was where the tweak came in, that I decided on to make a little note on my phone, nothing fancy, to create a little January menu. I have a menu of things that I want to try and do, and a menu of things that our family wants to do. And it's very personal to me because, just full disclosure, I like to organize and I like to declutter. Like, those things actually bring me joy. And so those are on my January to-dos of like life-giving things. They might not be on yours. And that's where, when I share this tweak, it has to be your menu of activities. But I started to create this small focus list of activities. Activities like the first weekend, I made pickled onions. I've always wanted to try. It made me laugh because, much like strawberry shortcake, which is my husband's favorite dessert, I thought was really fancy and hard to make. It's not, spoiler alert. And neither is pickled onions. It's easier than you think. I actually just chat GBT'd it. All the recipe bloggers are dying right now because we shouldn't do that, but it was the easy button. And I made pickled onions for the first time, which was super fun. We also made banana bread as a family because we had a bunch of bananas sitting in our freezer. We've even made a trip to the library in the last couple of weeks. And the kids have wanted to go skiing all winter long. And so I was like, okay, we're putting that on the menu. But let me just kind of go ahead and read you. I'm going to pull up on my phone. I just have it. Let's see. I think I titled it Things to Do. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh my goodness, where does it go? Let's see. Here it is. Things I want to do in January. I want to make a loaf of sourdough bread. Now, people always ask me for my sourdough. Remember, there was that whole firestorm on the internet that my sourdough is actually not legit sourdough, which is why I never share. But I still use it because it's like 70 years old, and it's Scott's family's sourdough. But basically, I think what I actually make is like a sourdough discard bread, but that's neither here nor there. That's what I want to make. We have made soft pretzels in the past. We've used the Magnolia Table Cookbook to make them, and they are delicious. And we love Auntie Anne's, and so we're like, oh, we should make those at home. So that's on our menu. I wanted to learn how to make homemade granola, pickled onions. I also want to declutter my closet. I also want to clean out our wrapping paper dresser, declutter the office cabinets, and declutter the kids' toy cabinet. Now, these are all things that they're just a menu. It doesn't, it, I think it to me, this feels different than a to-do list. These are things that, like, if I have time, and I'll explain more in a minute, these are things that I can do as opposed to defaulting to my phone. And again, like I told you, decluttering actually is very soothing and restful to me. So you have to ask yourself, what do you enjoy? That might not go on your menu of soul-filling things to do in January. That might be a to-do list, which in my opinion is two different things. Okay, and then family game or family ideas. I wrote down play a game together. My kids are loving the Dude Perfect game. They got it from us for Christmas as a family gift, and they have been loving that. So we've been playing that quite a bit. Again, I thought we had so much fun with our Christmas movie and charcuterie night. We should try that again. So I put family movie and charcuterie night. I want to watch Wicked with Vera. We've yet to see it. Go sledding or snow tubing as a family. I prefer snow tubing because they drag you up the mountain. And I'll talk about that. Homemade pizza night, hot tub, watch Winkle's The Heart with Lucille. That's on Hallmark. We love that show together. Pick out Valentine's, visit the library, and go skiing. So those are some of the things that we've written on our menu. Notice it's not this long bucket list of things. I think sometimes we can get too many ideas and then it becomes overwhelming and it kind of negates the tweak. And here's why. I always use the Cheesecake Factory menu as an example. If you've ever been to Cheesecake Factory, their menu is 50 pages long. I think they have like 25 different cheesecakes on any given night. And the decision fatigue is real there. I always say that they could probably eliminate the wait time at that restaurant if they just shortened up the menu list. Have you ever been to a restaurant where they have like 5 options? And while none of them really probably sound maybe all, none of them are like, wow, I really want that. You're able to make a decision easier because there's less options. So, in the point of this is to not default to our phones and to be more intentional with our time. The goal is not to like have this huge list where we're just having one more decision fatigue moment of like, I don't even know what to do. There's too many options, of just keeping it really simple. So don't feel like you have to make this big menu. 3 to 5 things that you'd like to try in January, 3 to 5 things you'd like to do with your family, and then pick one a weekend and you have yourself a little more intentionality. So let me explain why this works, because I think this is really important, because in order for us to actually buy in, sometimes we just, as humans, we need to know why. Like, does this actually work? And is there science behind it? And there actually is. Planning isn't, and I always there's people out there. I have a good friend that listens every week and she's like, you and I are polar opposites. She is not a planner. And here's the point of this. This isn't about being a planner or not being a planner. This is about intentionally using our time. And planning isn't about filling every minute, being super rigid with our schedule. It's about being intentional with our time. And the older my kids get, the more I'm realizing that in order to be intentional with my time, I've got to do things like this because they're teenagers now and things are pulling us in a million different directions. And so having even one thing, quality over quantity, really helps us to be intentional. So, and here's the thing too, without a plan, we default. This is human nature. Without a plan, we default to the easiest thing, which is often our phones. I find this even with reading at the end of the day. So the other day I noticed this because I was sitting in bed, I had my phone, and I was just scrolling. And I love to read before bed, but it was almost like I had to purposefully put my phone in the bathroom in order to read because the phone is such an easy dopamine hit. It's so easy and it's so mindless. It's an escape for many of us. But here's what I find is our phones are not the best substitute, especially for those of us who suffer from anxiety or depression. They can actually for me, it can magnify those things. It can only almost like magnify my anxiety. So I have to be very purposeful about putting it down and choosing something else because I know that that's my default. And for many of us, that's our thing. And here's the thing, we rely and think, okay, we're going to rely on our willpower and self-control. I'm going to put down my phone. But what happens then is we put down the phone and we're bored and we don't have an alternative. And then it's like, okay, well, the easiest thing is to pick my phone back up. And that's where having this little menu of ideas in place, even a simple plan of like, hey, we're going to do this one thing and I'm going to try this one thing by myself. It helps us in moments of boredom and indecision because our brains are craving stimulation and our phones offer that immediately and with low effort. So if we want to not be just defaulting to our phones, we have to have something to replace it. And so I think that's where this menu comes into play. The other thing, as I mentioned before, the more choices we face, the harder it is to make intentional ones. So, like I said, if you don't have any plans and you're like, okay, I'm not going to be on my phone next weekend, but you have no plan to replace it, it's going to be really hard for you to use your time intentionally. And it can be really overwhelming if you have too big of a list. So I can't stress enough that this simple menu is really just supposed to help you, not add to your decision fatigue. So the thing with bucket lists, and I have kind of a beef with them. I used to do them all the time with my kids until we'd get to the end of the summer and we'd only get 50% of the way done. And we'd be like, womp womp, that was a failure of a summer. And that is not true. But that's kind of how I felt because I was like, well, I didn't get to all my bucket list things. And that's not what this is supposed to be either. Just a few things that you're like, okay, this is an alternative. The other thing I love about this little menu is it kind of creates this anticipation. I've talked about this with vacations before. There's three phases of vacations, three phases of any experience, if you will. And I've used this mostly with vacations. I'll use it for this analogy. But when you're planning a vacation, there's anticipation, right? We're planning to go away to the beach for spring break this year, and there is anticipation. Like we're so excited, and there's enjoyment and excitement about that. And then it's the actual experience that you're enjoying. And then there's the memory that stays with you afterwards. So that's the really cool part about these things is that we get to enjoy it in anticipation, we get to enjoy the experience, and then we get to enjoy the memory. Not only that, when it's easy like this, when we have a little menu and we taste a little bit of success, like, yay, I was more intentional with my time, which is how I felt weekend 2 and weekend 3. Weekend 1, I left the weekend just feeling blah. Weekend 2 and weekend 3, I was like, wow, I used my time more intentionally. And that success from weekend 2 propelled me to do it again weekend 3. We underestimate the power of what success feels like. It's incredibly motivating, which is why I always tell you to start small, see success, and move forward. And it's the same with this menu idea. Just picking even one thing to say, like, I'm going to intentionally do this instead of scrolling on my phone this weekend. It is so, so rewarding. Okay, so let's go into how you can incorporate this into your life. So again, just remember I was like unintentional. I wasn't using my time. I reflected back into December and like how that intentionality really helped me. That planning up front helped me to really spend time with my family. And I wanted to take that into January. So I made this little menu of items. Last weekend, Vera, Lucille, and I went to Costco. It was an errand, but I turned it into an experience simply by being like, hey, does anybody want to go with me? And we did. And then anything like menu wise, just as a caveat, that you are like, hey, this is very definitive. It has to happen on this day at this time. For us, snow tubing and skiing, we're like, it has to happen probably on a Saturday. Just works with our schedule better. Well, with show choir and other stuff going on, that really eliminated several weekends. And so we just put a save the date, like a little time block on our calendars so that as other things and other ideas get thrown at us, we can say, no, this is the time we've set aside to do this with our family. And that's really important. So if there's like a time sensitive thing, like a time and a date you want to do it, like say you're like, I really want to go to this play in our local theater, put it on your calendar so that you know you have it on the schedule. But here's the unintended benefits that have happened as a result of this little menu, if you will. We're learning new skills. spending quality time with the kids, and even feeling some small wins, like a productive trip to Costco or making some banana bread so that the kids can enjoy it for a couple of mornings and breakfasts, right? So, how can you implement this little January menu so that you can use your time more intentionally? Because here's the thing. The goal of Simple Purposeful Living is to simplify our lives so that we can be more purposeful and to enjoy and be present for the moments that matter. So, how can we simplify that process? In this case, we're going to simplify by creating a little menu of things that we want to learn, things we want to do with our family. Remember, keeping it simple because we don't want to add to the decision fatigue. And then using that menu to kind of come up with a little bit of a loose game plan for 1 to 2 things you want to do with your family so that you can be purposeful with the time that you have on the weekends. And again, I encourage you not just to come up with things for your family, but for yourself too. I think it's so important to learn new skills and just to have fun. I have found that I love to noodle around in the kitchen. Noodle around. I don't know, dink around in the kitchen, whatever you want to say. Like I love, even this last weekend, I made a big family meal. It was Asian inspired. I did Thai noodles. We did pot stickers. I did hibachi vegetables. I love doing that, especially if I have time. And so that's something else I've incorporated into our January menu of making a big Sunday meal. I can't do it during the week. Our schedule's too busy with all the kids' activities. Like I just don't have the time. I could do it, but it would actually stress me out because then I have to clean the kitchen, all those sorts of things. Where on Sunday, A, I have the time, and B, I have the support. Like people will help me kind of clean up if I need, like Scott's happy to help me clean up or whatever. And I actually enjoy doing the dishes if I'm not in a hurry. Like that is actually very soothing for me. Again, these are personal things, but this is important, like part of reflection of finding things that you enjoy and then making time to do them. So I hope that you were encouraged to kind of think about how can you make tiny tweaks, even the tiny tweak of, that didn't go very well. Like my beginning of January weekend, like, that didn't go very well. What is something that I could change to make it better next weekend? And honestly, if that didn't work, the beauty of a tweak is you just tweak it again. But taking that time for reflection and saying, okay, this worked in December. Let's see if we can take that knowledge and that information and apply it to January so that we can be more purposeful with our time in simple ways, like having a little menu. So if you decide to create a little January menu, you'll have to let me know what are on your things. Like what are things that you want to learn how to do? If you're not sure, here's another little tool. Sometimes I'll go to ChatGPT. I'm pulling it up right now. And you can type in, I'm going to speak into it. I'm going to say, hi, I'm Erin, and I love to cook, declutter, organize, spend time with my family. We love to be outside if it's warm enough in the winter. What are some ideas of fun things we can do that don't cost a lot of money, don't take a lot of resources for us to enjoy this winter? I literally just spoke that in, and it's going to pop out lots of ideas. And so here's some opportunities. A winter walk or hike. Genius. All right. And let's see what else. An outdoor game of freeze tag. I don't know that I'd like to do that, but here's another one. A backyard bonfire. We have done that before, and that is so fun. That'd be perfect for the menu. Ice skating at a local pond. We actually have an ice skating rink here in town that we could use. A family cooking challenge. Bake together. Cozy blanket forts. Themed movie night. Puzzles. Board game night. Anyway, lots of different options just with using ChatGPT. So if you're not sure, that's a great place to start as another tweak to get your juices flowing. All right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. I hope that you enjoyed the tiny tweak that we made so that we could be more intentional with our weekends. Every week, I aim to simplify your life on purpose with a tiny tweak. No life overhaul required because let's be honest, we're too busy and overwhelmed for one more big major change. And honestly, human behavior tells us we're most successful with a tiny tweak anyway. All right, friends, see you next week. If you liked this episode, it would mean so much if you'd share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review so others can find our show. Until next time, you can find me at Simple Purposeful Living on Instagram and Facebook.